is Neil Patel. You might already know him. He's an industry leader that has worked with Fortune 500 companies. Forbes called him a top 10 marketer, and his marketing blog alone gets over 9 million visitors a month. He also created one of the fastest growing companies, NP Digital, not to mention his smile, iconic. When working with NP Digital, it's like working with a team full of Neil Patels that are laser focused on growing your business. NP Digital, real marketing with real results.
We have no exposure to Evergrande, is the short answer. Our own strategy on China for the last several years has been built on building independent credit.
What's up, big Boss Blunts here, Marcel Klinovic. Just going to take a look at good old Kenny Griffin's desperation attempt at getting public sentiment back on his side on Bloomberg TV, live now. What's up, everybody? Martin, Pete, Wapti, Pulsar.
I'm Alex Steele. Welcome to Bloomberg Markets. In just a few moments, we're going to speak to Ken Griffin, founder and CEO of Citadel, on the threat of inflation, return to offices, and whether he believes in cryptocurrencies. In the meantime, it is a messy Monday shaping up within the equity market. Let's check in here on the major averages. You have the NASDAQ 100 down, the worst performer there. NASDAQ comp is down by about 2.45%. The S&P also down by over 1.5%. NASDAQ 100 getting hit hard. A part of that is Moderna. That stock now down another 4.5%.
And everybody's still buying Bank of America.
You had a Pfizer booster for adults cleared in the EU, Moderna for some, but still getting beaten up from that Merck COVID pill data that was very positive that we saw on Friday. So that's really leading the way down. Also Facebook as well. Also, want to point out what's happening with the 10-year, which is a whole lot of nothing. Not seeing that safe haven buying come into the 10-year, the dollar or gold. They're up by about 7 ounces, so not that much. Crude, though, really the outperformer, up by a full 3 percentage points. 78. You got over 80 for Brent. That's helping the S&P 500 energy sector. On the flip side, though, you have to wonder how much more oil can rally without affecting the broader sentiment as well. And as we head into earnings season, that is going to be critical because oil is really exemplary of the input cost increase that we're seeing when you're looking at gas or labor or supply chains or crude prices continue to get higher. That's going to squeeze margins. You have to see which are going to be able to depend on their operating costs and be able to pass on those costs to consumers and who can't. I was speaking to one restaurateur over the weekend who said that they have to close 2 days a week because they can't compete with labor. They have to raise wages, that they can't get the food that they want, that their food deliveries are all over the place, and you have certain input costs are super high, and they have to rejigger their menu every day just to make it work. So it's been pretty brutal for some individuals. So again, we're looking at risk-off Monday, pretty messy there. And waiting for earnings season kicking off in about a week and a half. VIX, you got VIX is staying elevated as well. I'm interested to see what happens into the close here because if you have some dip buying coming in, that could really help support equities around here and into the close. On the flip side, though, retail buyers have not been in the market in the same kind of way in terms of, say, opening their Robinhood accounts, for example. So that's a real question, is who is going to wind up buying the dip. Let's get you some other stories here in the business world. Here is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tesla inflicting more pain on short sellers. Now, many of them are giving up. Shares of the electric car maker rose today after the company reported another record quarter of vehicles shipped. Tesla's up 38% since it hit its 2021 low in March, a measure of short interest. The percentage of stock borrowed by traders has now slumped to the lowest since 2010. And shares of Facebook falling to their lowest level since June. The social network is now down 13% from its peak last month. The decline came after a former product manager at Facebook told CBS 60 Minutes the company prioritizes profits over the well-being of its users. And that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. We want to go right now to the Economic Club of Chicago with Citadel CEO and founder Ken Griffin, speaking with Bloomberg's Eric Schaffner.
Cancel Ken Griffin.
And radio around the world. Ken, much of our conversation is going to turn on politics or policy in one way or another. Everyone here in our audience knows that over the years you've become increasingly active and involved in politics and policymaking, both as an advisor and as a funder on the local, state, and national level. So I think it makes sense because it's probably a question for everyone here for me to ask to begin, before we get into the details, do you have any political ambitions?
That is the out of left field starting question now, isn't that? I've got 3 young children and I've got a great full-time job. So for the time being, I'm going to stay focused on my family and on my work. But I am involved in politics because regretfully that's become such an important part of day-to-day life in America. As you're well aware, I've been involved in supporting a variety of charitable causes for a very long time. And it is heartbreaking to see hard-earned gains wiped out with the stroke of a pen from a thoughtless politician. And so I have become more involved in politics over the years because I'm trying to protect the American dream. I'm trying to protect the opportunity that everyone in this country should have to have a great life, a great education, and to have a life well lived.
He looks like shit. He's aged 10 years.
As you may imagine, folks, Ken and I are going to return to the topic of politics a little later in the show, but for the moment, I want to talk to you about the pandemic. Ken, you've been deeply involved in the fight against COVID-19. You personally lobbied the Trump administration at the very highest levels to fund vaccine development by pre-purchasing doses from multiple drug companies, what of course became Operation Warp Speed, and you pulled levers to push the FDA to speed approval of COVID-19 treatments. How do we beat the virus when only 56% of Americans are fully vaccinated?
So let me reframe the question. The great part of working with the Trump administration is you could reason with the individuals who ran our country. And with Operation Warp Speed, it was a very simple concept that spending a few $1 billion without knowing which vaccines were going to work, but to start the manufacturing process before we had FDA approval would greatly compress time to market. And so if we had a winning vaccine, if we had a vaccine that was going to be successful, we could bring that to Americans far faster than the alternative. And that worked beautifully. The United States really, out of the gate, had a supply of vaccines that was unparalleled in the rest of the large economies around the world.
This fucking
Operation
guy.
Warp Speed
Drop him
was
a big middle
home
finger
run.
in the chat.
And it really goes back to having people in the White House, whether it was the president or Jared Kushner or Vice President Pence, who were able to understand the concepts of real option theory and how to apply that to save American lives. $9 billion was spent, give or take, in Operation Warp Speed. Hundreds of thousands of lives were saved. It was one of the great accomplishments of the Trump administration. And I'm really indebted to my team for having come up with the idea for this strategy that has so impacted our country for the better. Now, having said that, one of the frustrations is that vaccination rates in the United States have plateaued out at an unacceptably low level. You know, if you look at my firm, where we have one of the great biotech investment teams in the world, we're about 98% vaccinated. So where you have the facts, the hard data,
fucking clown,
the unequivocal, like, scientific judgment to make a decision and to educate your team around why you should be vaccinated. We saw a voluntary vaccination rate, voluntary, not mandated at Citadel, of 98%. And I think we have fallen short as a country in communicating to our population just how important the vaccines are to change the destiny of this disease if you're infected.
You haven't had to impose a vaccine mandate at Citadel, clearly not, if 98 out of 100 of your employees are fully vaccinated. What about everybody else? Do you believe in vaccine mandates?
So now that we have FDA approval, we are going to start to face some pretty hard decisions as a country as to whether or not we vaccinate people mandatorily in key jobs. And I think if you're in healthcare, if you're in nursing homes, and if you're in occupations that you're going to touch the lives of others who may be immunocompromised, older in the years, you're going to have to be vaccinated. And then hopefully we'll get an FDA approval, not just an emergency youth authorization, but an FDA approval for children in the foreseeable future, which will allow us to mandate vaccines for school-aged children,
God, I wonder
just
how much
as we
he's
do
making
for a
off
number of other
pharmacies
diseases.
and vaccines,
this should
pharmaceutical
help to
companies.
reduce the surface area in which the virus can thrive and reduce the risk of mutations and other impacts that go with the endemic nature of the disease as we face it today.
There are people in this room, people watching live around the world who are struggling. They're government leaders and they're struggling with what decision to make. Should I mandate a vaccine? In other words, no jab, no job. Should that apply to, should private employers have that freedom, and should governments be able to do that?
So let's be clear. You need to respect, for example, people's religious right to refuse a vaccine. So it cannot be as a country that everyone has to be vaccinated, because we as a nation have a deep respect for people's individual and religious rights.
This douchebag was a home
Having
run.
put that aside, if we go back to those areas of the economy where people are in frequent contact with others, and in particular with others who would be greatly adversely impacted by the disease, I think the issue of public safety dominates, and vaccination mandates are appropriate in those realms. Again, nursing home care workers, for example. But I'd really like to think that as a nation that we can use, in some sense, our celebrities and our influencers and our politicians and our business leaders to drive.
Damn, he's so full of shit. This guy loves to hear himself speak. At the end of the day, forcing anybody to get a vaccine that's not been tested if for the long-term effects is unconstitutional. It is wrong. It is scary. It is not something that I would want for myself or my family. A lot of people like to believe that the vaccine has been tested and sped up through FDA approval. Yeah. What long-term tests? What long-term tests exist? Absolutely fucking zero. I'm not a lab rat. I'm not a guinea pig.
Possible the United
Plain
States.
and fucking simple. And I will not let my kids be guinea pigs either.
And we need to get past the education and conspiracy theories that are really undermining the acceptance of this vaccine amongst our broader population.
Can big companies across the country have pushed the return to office
They're asking pointless questions.
back to November, back to
'Cause they're trying to
December,
make
in
them
some
look good.
cases into
It's for public
2022? Talk to me about the approach you've taken at Citadel and Citadel Securities, and whether you think it's a model others should follow.
Oh, here we go.
So you asked the question exactly right. Big companies have pushed back the return to work. Smaller companies are back at work. And in some sense, it's a pretty straightforward reason. Small companies are always on the edge of their own existence. They don't have a big economic moat from a big consumer brand name. If you're a small business, you're trying to literally make it from day to day, week to week, in trying to realize your dream and to make your business successful. And the productivity hit of being in a remote environment by Zoom, you're just not going to be successful. Your business is just too fragile. And so what we see is a very stark.
Ken Griffin's airplane is parked at Midway Airport. It arrived there a few hours earlier today. Midway Airport in Chicago, his jet. The other one, this other smaller jet that can't be tracked, is in London right now. Probably his ex-wife took it in the divorce and is currently using it.
Most of the pandemic, there was that very initial phase where we were shut down like the rest of the country. We were fortunately able to literally build a trading floor in the Four Seasons in Palm Beach, Florida in 5 days. Bring 100 and some people down to Florida and to run a substantial part of the U.S. capital markets from a hotel in the middle of South Florida.
Hotel just
and
to be able to
that's
run their
a
operation
real
out of
credit
there.
to my team for their engineering ingenuity and their ability just to get the damn job done. And I really appreciate my team members who made that happen. It was incredibly important to the strong functioning of the U.S. markets and equities and fixed income and other assets that we pulled that off. But having said this, if you are early in your career, you are making a grave mistake not being back at work. It's incredibly difficult to have the managerial experiences, the interpersonal experiences that you need to have to take your career forward in a work remotely environment. Work remotely is very good at maintaining the status quo, but the world's not static. Competitive pressures from around the world will put American businesses continually under pressure. The Chinese have been back at work literally from almost the start. They're continuing to evolve at a very rapid rate of innovation. And we are, in many ways, stuck in patterns from 18 months ago because it is so much harder to create and to innovate in a remote working environment. So for our youngest members of our workforce, I'm gravely concerned that the loss of early career development opportunities is going to cost us dearly over the decades to come. That's where I think the biggest hit's going to be in looking forward in America.
In other words, working from home
He's all coked
has
out,
an
I think.
economic consequence
Look at
for
him.
the country.
He had a bad night at the
For the
office.
country and for a generation.
You've addressed the millennial question. The CEOs I speak to tell me they're also struggling, Ken, with another group of people in addition to those millennials, and that's the top producers, the senior people who don't want to go back to the office. They're just happy, thank you very much, working from home in the Hamptons or from Palm Beach or from Aspen, and when they don't go back to the office,
Thanks,
those young
Ben. Star
people
Killer,
whom we've
everybody
just talked
appreciate
about
you. Look at this
dragging
fucking
back
man.
in.
He's scared. He looks
Don't
more,
get the
looks even
apprenticeship.
more sweaty in this
You're
fucking
exactly
interview
right.
than he does in this picture.
You're exactly right. And this is where leadership matters. This is where when the CEO being in the office is so important. It's the tone from the top that we're going to get back together. We're going to get back to work. I really wish the President of the United States would make this part of a keynote address.
Ken Griffin is
It's
shorting the
time
stream right now.
for America.
Fucking thing is
to get
laggy as
back
shit.
to work.
And in the meantime, that burden of responsibility falls on corporate leadership and civic leadership to do the same thing.
Absolutely. And what's disheartening is when you see some of our corporate leaders like Jamie Dimon really trying to push the return back to work message, the blowback from the popular press.
Do you think that's why other CEOs aren't doing what he's doing and what you've just done?
Oh, I know it. If you talk to other CEOs,
Does that sound like a
they
fake
live in
audience to you
fear
guys?
of how
Laugh
they'll be
tracks?
publicly persecuted from delivering the straightforward message, it's time to go back to work.
So why shouldn't they be scared?
They are scared, and that's part of what we're seeing right now. And that's why, again, from a leadership perspective, if our president were to address this really grave concern, I think as a country we'd be much better off. If you look at the UK, for example, the message to the civil service is cut and dry. It's time to get back to work. We need that same message in Washington.
Cue the fake audience.
We need it for our government workers. We need it for our corporate leaders. We as a country, it's time to get back at it.
Ken, there's a huge divide between the camp that thinks the economy still needs more stimulus to fully recover from the pandemic and the other camp that thinks the government has done far
Let's see
too
the
much
audience.
stimulating.
Show us the
already.
audience if they're actually there. Where are
I
they
think
at?
I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask you nonetheless, which camp are you in?
So I was in the White House in March of 2020, and President Trump was going to put forth, in fact, did put forth the proposal for a tax holiday on Social Security. And I had to point out to the president, the issue wasn't people who were at work. The issue our country faced was people who could not work. The waitress, the hotel staff member, people in the travel industry who just, like literally, a light switch flicked and they were out of work. And we all know the stats of the stunning proportion of our population that has no savings. And it's not a pleasant place to be to disagree with President Trump, but I had to drive home the point. We needed to get checks in the hands of Americans as fast as we possibly could who had lost any ability to maintain their basic needs in life. Like this pandemic was going to wipe out millions, tens of millions of households that had no savings and no prospects of working for an unknown period of time.
He looks even worse today than he does in this fucking picture.
I take my hat off to
That's the messed up
Washington
thing.
for moving quickly on the first stimulus package, where we got those checks out the doors to American families and we protected people's ability to have the basic needs of life addressed. Now this has grown and grown over time to just a plethora of programs that have ultimately destroyed the incentive to work. You and I both know of the number of people today, or until recently, who are making more money on the pallet of government handouts than they were in their full-time employment. And that's crippled the supply chain in America. A real-life tangible example, I was at a restaurant in the northern suburbs of Chicago with one of my friends who's actually in the audience.
So he was hanging out in Northbrook with the rich folk.
And the owner came out after an hour, a Hispanic man, incredibly, you could just feel the emotional angst. He's like, I am so sorry that you're having such an awful experience. We hadn't even complained.
He's sweating like a pig. Holy shit.
But he just
I
knew
run hot, but damn.
The things weren't right.
He had a long night at Coke and Hookers, I think.
This should be a great moment for my business.
Jim Cramer.
I can't hire people, and I can't keep people. And just the anguish in his face was heartbreaking. And that's what so many small businesses are facing today in America. It's so hard to find people to come back to work, to do the jobs that we need to have done, whether it's working in the energy industries, it's delivering products and packages, it's being in manufacturing facilities, making goods and services. We're struggling to find, we have 11 million open jobs in America. We're struggling to find people willing to do them.
The people
How does
who
that
are
get fixed,
taping
Ken?
it.
Is it simply a matter of turning off the fiscal tap and turning off the monetary tap?
So it's really interesting that from a classic economic perspective, you would keep some level of government support in place to help us get back to full employment. And so your monetary approach is your general way of doing that. That's the ultra low interest rates that we have in America and the very aggressive asset purchase programs being run by the Fed. The problem
It appears Citadel has shorted his feed. The Economic Club of Chicago and Bloomberg is
all the work that Powell and team are doing at the Fed,
this delusional old man. That's
by
right,
creating
ZQ.
so many incentives to not work.
This guy acts like he has any idea
That's
what's
what we
going on
need
with
to
the fucking
change.
economy. He is so
We
out
need
of
to
touch.
align our
This rich
fiscal
prick
policies
who spends
with
$26,000 a
go back
month
to
on
work, and
fucking
here's why.
groceries, who makes
With our
$50 million a
monetary
fucking
policies
month.
that are very effective
Fuck this
at
rich prick, doesn't know
encouraging
shit about the
capital
average
formation,
American.
capital growth.
Just so I'm clear then, and I think there are people here who'd like to know, the monetary policy that the Fed has pursued and is pursuing, you're fine with. You're aware that there are people who think they should have started to taper asset purchases long ago and that the next meeting is far too late, and that we should be talking about the path to normalization for interest rates.
So I'm going to tell you, it is a job that I would be so happy not to have.
It just so happens you don't have it.
And I'm so grateful.
Come on, Bloomberg, with your shitty feed. The fuck?
And managing to have us at full employment. That is the only mandate of the Fed, price stability and full employment. And let's be clear, right now we don't have price stability. Inflation at 5% is amongst the highest numbers that many in this room have ever seen in their lifetime.
No shit. It looks like this dumbass has been watching my fucking feed.
And the bet is it's transitory, and that's a
He's
big
actually
bet.
making a couple of good points.
But we're nowhere near full employment
Congrats.
either. So the Fed's in a really tough box. And the challenge is the Fed has to take the
Sadly, he has no
regulatory
idea how to fucking work with
and
people,
fiscal
how to fix it.
policies
He has no
of
idea what the average
Washington
American
as
goes
a
through.
given. They can't influence those policies. And to the extent that those policies are working
Why is anybody going to go to
against
work
what
for
the Fed's
$15
trying to
an hour if they're going to get
accomplish,
paid $20 to
they
sit
are
home for the
really
fucking
in no
government?
man's land in terms of a
Ken
struggle.
Griffin acts like he just fucking thought this up himself, like he's the first person to ever think about this. It's fucking ridiculous. This guy's acting like he's actually telling us something we don't actually know or don't already know. What the fuck's he doing? Come on,
They
Bloomberg,
are
get
really
your
in
shit
no
together.
man's land in terms of a struggle. I think if I am Chairman Powell, I stay the course that I'm on, as unnerving as that is, because to see inflation running this hot is really unsettling. You know, there's a fear that we on-anchor inflation expectations. And if that happens, we're going to have to go from an ultra-low interest rate environment to a much higher interest rate environment very quickly, and that will unquestionably plunge us into a recession.
Huge risk, but all the same, you think the Fed under Chairman Powell should stay that course?
I think he has to stay the course, given his dual mandate. Remember, it's not what we would want to do, it's what he is directed to.
Never forget 2008. Never
The
forget.
opportunity for political capture goes up dramatically. And I think that could be devastating to our country.
There was a lot of talk during the last presidential administration that the Fed had become politicized. Do you think the Fed has become sufficiently deeply politicized?
It was perhaps the only time I publicly spoke out against Trump was actually defending Chairman Powell. Because I believe that Trump's efforts to cajole the Fed were inappropriate. We need to maintain the belief in the separation of the Fed from the whims of Washington to maintain a strong dollar. It's just that simple.
For those of you that don't know,
every time a politician goes after the Fed in a very personal and inappropriate way,
those are people in hedge funds on Wall Street in 2008, standing at the top of the high rises, taking pictures of the people protesting that just lost their entire life savings, pensions, and 401k on the stock market after the 2008 stock market crash. These are hedge funds. These are people begging for their fucking money, complaining about criminals like this. Come on, Bloomberg, get your shit together.
In an existential battle with China, a battle that will define the 21st century, and that it's high time we fought back. That's what they think. I want to be clear, and in fact, more importantly, I want you to be clear, but as I understand it, you believe the United States is making a huge mistake by trying to decouple this economy from China.
I want my fucking money.
And that you believe it's just as existential.
Gary Gensler.
Am I correct?
I want my
I
fucking
think
money.
more troubling is, I think, in many very important ways, we have already decoupled. By restricting Chinese access to American semiconductors and to American software, we have pushed them into a national campaign. Software stacks. So in the United States, for example, it's Intel, it's Windows, it's Intel, it's Linux, and then it's the software ecosystem that lives on top of that.
Say Intel
that
three
is
more
used
times.
by so much of the Western society, from Germany to France to Canada to Japan to Australia. I mean, the United States' dominance in technology over the last 50 years has been just stunning and a huge source of economic growth in our country.
Come on. Come on,
Become
Bloomberg.
technologically
What are you doing
independent. And in their space race, they're gonna win. They're gonna make this happen. You know, they graduate about 2 times as many graduates a year from college as we do. Half of whom have STEM degrees. In contrast, about
Apparently, my top-of-the-line internet is just not good
the
enough.
belief that
no
we will
matter how
be
shitty Bloomberg is
technologically
over here.
dominant against those statistics is simply naive, misplaced. And so as the Chinese build out their semiconductors of this decade and their technology stack of this decade, not only will they use it in the biggest market in the world, which is their own domestic market of 1.4 billion people, but they'll push it to all their trading partners, the Brazils of the world, the Chiles of the world.
Surprised you said
all
Brazil,
of
huh?
Africa. And I can picture a world in 30 to 40 years from now where, in some sense, we have divided the world up between East and West technologically.
He's got so much to say, but he doesn't mention the Citadel scandal. He doesn't mention the Robinhood scandal, or Bank of America, or Goldman Sachs, UBS, AIG. How come he's not mentioning his prime brokers, who he's lost the majority of their money for the year? How come he doesn't mention the fact that he lost 1/4 of Michael Jordan's net worth? I'm sorry, that was Melvin Capital, also lost on GameStop and AMC. I apologize for the shit feed over here. As you can see, Bloomberg is complete garbage. You know, my computer's running strong. I got a fantastic internet feed. I got excellent connection to YouTube, according to this. We're having absolutely no issues. I'm running 32 gigs of RAM on this computer, all right, with a quad-core, liquid-cooled processor. This shit's not fucking lagging on my end. These are his buddies over in Wall Street, for those of you that are not aware of. This is a fluff piece to help his image, says Christopher Chestnut. Yeah, I absolutely do believe that this is a fluff piece to help him. Absolutely do. That's the only reason it's here. See? Fucking unreal. This is so sad. And for those of you that don't know, Facebook is down, Instagram is down, Coinbase is down. Many, many apps are down right at this very moment. Yeah, I'm aware that it froze, Antonio. Like I said, I'm trying to make it work over here. That's the quality of Bloomberg stream. So that's where we're at. Sorry if I lost you. Not much I can do there on this one. Either way, I don't think this piece of shit's got much to hear that we've actually that we haven't heard before. Not a whole lot at all, actually.
Gary Gensler, I want my fucking money. 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 I want my fucking money. Gary Gensler, I want my fucking money. Money. I want my fucking money. Gary Gensler, I want my fucking money. Gensler, I want my fucking money. 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 I want my fucking money.
We can't hear Ken Griffin being a tool over here, and that's okay. Just leave you guys with this. This is what our government does. This is what Citadel does when people switch. They poach people from the CFTC, such as Heath Tarbert, who went to go work for Citadel as their chief legal officer of Citadel Securities on April 6, 2021. And in his place, a guy he used to work with together at the CFTC, Rostin Beanham, was made to be the head of the CFTC. He used to work under him at the CFTC. He now works at Citadel as of April 6th, and he is the head of the CFTC. This is the criminal fuckery, allegedly and supposedly, that is happening overseas and offshore. This is it. These guys, under the table, who knows what the fuck they're really up to, but why would you allow depository receipts to be issued for stocks that are already proven to be shorted dozens of times to float? Why?
Gary Gensler,
It's fucking crooks. It's criminals.
I want my fucking money.
That interview was a waste of time because Ken Griffin is a fucking lying piece of shit, allegedly, and a criminal who has been doing way too much to defraud Americans, in my opinion. But that's a story for a judge to decide. You guys have a great day. I'll see you guys later on. Peace and wealth.
Gary Gensler.